have I done? Okay, I thought I had done this correctly. So the mode is on microphone,
Yes.
right? That's all I moved. The phantom stays off. Well, they said they couldn't hear. Definitely need to.
I'll get some batteries once we come back up.
Okay,
The green light is not on.
it's not on. No,
All right, or I'll try to check out these batteries right here.
they give them to me.
Reverend Jesse Jackson. Call 1-866
So passing.
594 HOPE. That's
No,
1-866
I'll do it. We'll talk something
594
right now.
4673.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Hope that you'll join me on my show, on the Santita Jackson Show, on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT, every day from 6 to 8 Central Standard Time, 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call us right now at 866-594-HOPE, 866-594-4673, and let's talk about the Jesse Smollett case. It's debated, hotly debated. And a lot of people do not believe Jesse's side, but they did initially. But then the Chicago Police Department, they put out another narrative, and the corporate media latched onto it and turned public sentiment against him, and it has not moved. And so I want to hear what your thoughts are, everybody. We have a simple question on Reverend Jackson's. On Reverend Jackson's. Where is that, Jeremy? On where's the thingamajiggy? Okay. Anyway, we have a simple question on Reverend Jackson's Twitter feed. Just a simple question. Do you agree with the verdict? 56% of you say yes. Yes. 17% of you thus far say no. 28% of you are not sure. So I want to know. I want to know what your thoughts are today, particularly after you hear some more of this information. Joining us today, we've got Attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, but he's also a radio host, brilliant host in his own right, on WAOK, the iconic talk radio station in Atlanta. And we've got really one of the top podcasters in all of radio from the Make It Plain podcast, brilliant minister, brilliant preacher, Reverend Mark Thompson. So glad they're joining this investigative journalist who said, hey, I didn't even watch Empire. I was not interested in any of this, but there was something about this case that just didn't resonate with justice for you. Shelley Stanley, why did you start investigating this? Let's just start there.
Public and for hiding evidence from the public. When they came out with a different narrative, there was almost no critical thinking that I saw, and people just immediately switched and then were incited by CPD and the public to, I felt, become almost like a lynch mob atmosphere towards Jesse without, in my opinion, violating, his rights to be considered innocent until proven guilty. And that to me was very frightening, very alarming. It was alarming to me that in the future, if this case went through, that anyone who the police accused of lying could be subjected to such treatment and could be sentenced to, they tried to sentence him initially to 16 felonies, one for each supposed lie that he told to the police. And so obviously if the police were corrupt and wanted to turn something on you, it just created a very dangerous environment, I felt, in the country to have this so high profile and to have so much information kept from the public about the officers' backgrounds, which I then just started to investigate because I questioned the CPD in this, and I started to investigate the investigating officers and then the investigation itself when they started to release more documents to the public.
Well, let's start with the officers. What did you find?
Yeah, so first I just want to say that, during the trial, Judge Lynn banned the defense team, Jesse's defense team, from talking about police misconduct, from talking about the officers' allegation backgrounds, from talking about Eddie Johnson, Kim Fox, Rahm Emanuel, and the CPD leaks. And of course, this was done, in private, and nobody knew that. The jury didn't know that. The public didn't know that. So they were not allowed to know. To start, Jesse was accused of, in this case, of lying to 3 officers. The first was just this guy, Mohammed Bag, who showed up that night when the call initially came in. He's a street police officer, not a detective. And then the others, though, are Kim Murray and Detective Robert Graves. And Kim Murray herself has been formally accused of using homophobic hate speech towards a Black man. And Robert Graves has 20 allegations against him that the people of Chicago have actually gone to the Chicago Police Department and filed a formal allegation of misconduct against him. And in one involving a group of Black men and women, he called someone a lying MF, and he stereotyped by stating words to the effect of, quote, "You must belong to a gang because you live in public housing," and then threatened to beat them up and physically, violently attack them. So that's, in my analysis, hate speech, racist hate speech, and threatening violence against a group of Black men and women. So if the public were able to know these things about just these 2 officers, that one was accused of homophobic hate speech towards a Black man, the other is accused of, as I said, racist hate speech and threatening to attack a group of Black men and women, I think that the jury would have had a different feeling about these 2 detectives and had more questions, and also the public would have had more questions.
What about the 2 brothers? What about the 2 brothers? I mean, I'm trying to get some of the highlights before we get some feedback.
Yeah. Okay. So the 2 brothers, they were arrested at the airport on their return from Nigeria by the police. And there's a lot. I mean, we'll get into it, but the police had evidence that the men that attacked Jesse were white, first of all, but then they arrested these 2 Nigerian brothers at the airport, and the brothers refused to eat during their entire time in interrogation. For the first 48 hours they were there, they refused to eat. The police records say they did not trust the police. And in the 47th hour, after making statements to the public about how they had nothing to do with this, they think that they're sure the evidence will prove them guilty, and they send their best to Jesse. In the 47th hour, in Chicago, which is known as the false confession capital of the country and is known, for torturing people into false confessions, among other things, the Osendaria brothers changed their story and said that yes, Jesse put them up to this. The very interesting thing about that is that they were not charged, right? They were not charged at all. They became, in fact, the police's only witnesses and star witnesses. And even though, as Santita said, the police said that they found all these things in the brother's house, like heroin, cocaine, a bunch of guns, even though one of the brothers is a convicted felon, the police tried to explain that away during the trial. Officer Detective Feast said on the stand that he does not know what happened to the fingerprints from the guns. And if Ola, the brother who has a felony, touched the guns, he doesn't know. And also that they explained away the drugs by saying that the cocaine could have been in the safe that they found it in for 10 to 20 years. And so they didn't feel the need to pursue anything about it because it was probably just there for 10 to 20 years. So, I think this part of the case was not analyzed very much by the public, but I know that a lot of people understand, especially in Chicago, I'm sure, and throughout, many communities of color, that, their police can coerce people to give false statements and then use those people to become their star witnesses and not charge them with anything of what, they've clearly said that they did. They become protected. They become a state asset. They become the police's and the state's star witnesses. And so, I think that that's something that was very much missed in the analysis of this case.
Mark, the corporate media have shaped a particular narrative about this case. Were you familiar with? I mean, there's much more that Shelley Sandley's going to be telling us throughout the course of the show. Were you familiar with any of this?
No, good morning, everyone, and always honored to be on the show, Santita. However, you have developed a habit of inviting me on with, guests like Shelley and have asking me to comment. But these great guests like Shelley leave me speechless. And you can't be speechless on a talk show. This is some.
Why are you speechless?
Because
why are you speechless?
This is some really incredible information, and to your point, that the mainstream media has now reported on. Many did not know about. I was not aware of until you introduced me to Shelley, and now really it makes me question really the discernment of us all, because unfortunately a lot of people, including sadly a lot of Black people, turned on Jesse. And it just went along with the narrative. This was something that he made up. It became the stuff of a made-up urban legend. Black Twitter even went after him, and I didn't quite get that, because Jesse, he's an actor. He's not someone who, to my knowledge, had a history of fabrication. But people were so willing to go along with it, and then now to hear that a lot of this may have been manufactured by the Chicago Police Department itself is very, very troubling. And so no, many of these details I did not know. But what's interesting, and I commend you, Shelley, God bless you, it's a pleasure to meet you. What I will say is that, sometimes people need to be reminded, and looking at the investigative work Shelley's done, it causes one to say, well, yeah, we did kind of know this about Chicago Police Department. This is their modus operandi. This is their history. And I regret that people weren't more, all of us, many of us, the country was not more scrutinizing of the CPD as much as Shelley was.
But we jumped so fast. I mean, but has this information shifted your thought? I mean, and mind you, this is not to diminish anyone or people who actually still say, this is still shady, and I still think that he lied. And even the police have said, if he just would have said he was sorry, he never would have been arrested. That's what the Chicago police chief said. And they had some body experts, and this is in the New York Post, a very conservative newspaper, but still mainstream nonetheless, corporate media. Experts say that Jussie Smollett is, quote, in a matrix of arrogance because they want him to be broken down. And he has refused to cop a plea.
Yeah. It obviously, and that's what I'm saying, it has definitely shifted my thoughts, if for no other reason. I mean, you really have to wonder, and I'll be frank, it was something that I was not very passionate about, but looking back on and seeing this information, and now I'm wondering what made so many other people have such a visceral negative reaction toward Jesse. That's what I couldn't understand. And that's what kind of, I think, discouraged me from saying a lot about it, because it was, people got into this viral type of attitude, and it caused me to wonder, wait a minute, there's something about Jesse we don't know. I never knew of him having a history of fabricating something like this. But you're right, Santee, everybody jumped on it. I didn't get it, but it was like, okay, I guess this is what it is. But hearing this information now ought to cause everyone to go back and rethink their thoughts toward him.
But some other people might not. I mean, so what is your thinking about this, Robert Patillo? And everyone, please, his show is on from 1 to 4 today. But there's so much to
Mhm.
talk about today. I don't even know what you're going to talk about today. But you can cover a lot of ground, and he covers all of the ground, as do you, Mark. You all are two of the most brilliant hosts I know. Robert Patillo, your thoughts,
Thank you.
of course.
Well, thank you so much, Santita. And I think today we're going to be talking about Julian Assange and the United States government's continued effort
Mhm.
to extradite him to the United States for trial. The one common thread that those two cases have, both Julian Assange and Jesse Smollett, is just the fact that you cannot trust law enforcement. I agree with everything that was said earlier about this Chicago Police Department, about the corruption involved, the fact that once they got egg on their face in the case, they put in as much effort into solving some of this gang violence and murders in the city of Chicago as they put into bringing the criminal mastermind Jesse Smollett to justice. Maybe we wouldn't have the levels of violence in the city that we have right now. But I'd often bifurcate things into two positions. You have the macro issue, as we talked about the other day, which is the issue of the Chicago Police Department, their culture of corruption, their culture of fabricating evidence, their culture of overcharging African Americans, human rights violations, etc. But then the micro issue of what went on in this particular trial, and the burden that the defense team had, and whether or not they were able to carry that burden at trial. So we go to a trial. The state, of course, has the ultimate burden of proving their case to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. I think everyone knows that. But once the prosecution presents their case in chief, then the defense has the burden to rebut those that prima facie case that they put forward. So I was interested, and I still not quite understood what the defense's theory of the case was. Are they claiming that the Osunyor brothers were made these things up to avoid prosecution and therefore threw Jesse under the bus, quote unquote? Are they claiming that the police department was corrupted and embarrassed by the allegations against them and their inability to find these individuals, and therefore pressure the Osunyor brothers to flip on Jesse and fabricate these allegations? They also never articulate what exactly the motive behind those things would have been, or present these sort of witnesses that will rebut the evidence created by the state. So when the state has two in-person witnesses with a corroborated story that also has physical evidence behind it, where the defense team does not have a concomitant set of witnesses that can rebut the presumption created by the state, then even if the macro issue of police corruption in Chicago is true, on the micro level, on this individual trial with the facts presented, then the defense has not carried their burden. And I think because we did not have cameras in the courtroom, we were not able to see the case blow by blow. We have less information about exactly what was presented. But to a jury of his peers, he was not able to carry that burden going forward. I think most defense attorneys, given the paucity of evidence that the defense team had, would have, as you mentioned, would have tried to plead the case out instead of taking it all the way to trial. Because even at trial, what exactly was the defense that Smollett was putting forward that will rebut the two in-person witnesses and physical evidence that the state had? So even if the police department is corrupt to the core, which many of us believe, the reason that much that the background information on the officers didn't come forward at trial, normally the judge will strike down on the question of relevance, that the officers passed unless it's directly germane to the issues presented by the defense team. Unless it's directly germane and on point with that, then that will be what they call fishing expedition sometimes, instead of being on the point of whether or not the crimes which were accused by Mr. Smollett indeed did happen. And I think unless the defense team can carry that burden, then it will be very difficult to get an acquittal in the case.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about this. 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. We're talking with Shelley Stanley. Shelley Stanley, brilliant investigative journalist. Make It Plain podcast. Reverend Mark Thompson, the host. He's with us today, as is attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. He hosts his own show. It'll be on today from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time on WAOK. Let's talk about the Jussie Smollett case, and let's continue to get more information out here to you. And I want to know what your thoughts are. Back in just a minute. And on YouTube. Shelley? Well, don't spend your best stuff over here because we've got to come back up. But but can you bring it down just a bit? Do you think that that Jussie was well represented? Thank you so much, and I have to thank on air Jeremy Geiger, who's my technical producer and engineer. Wouldn't be able to make it without him. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And he's got the most gorgeous head of hair right now. I'm like, what? What happened here? Okay. But do you think he was well represented? Do you think he was adequately represented, Shelley?
I think he was very well represented. I think Menus Uche and his team did an excellent job. But I think for me, it is confusing when the brothers are involved. That's the prosecution's case. You know, the prosecution said that the brothers were involved. The police said the brothers were involved. I did not see anything in the initial police reports that showed any Nigerian or Black people at the scene. All the initial police reports said that there were witnesses and video evidence that showed suspects at the scene, and all the witnesses said that the attackers and the suspects were white. So I would have very much focused on that and not gone along at all with the prosecution's story, because I think it's just confusing. I mean, he reported white men at the scene, and other witnesses reported white men at the scene, you know, and he knows those brothers, and so that's confusing to the public. It just doesn't make sense that they would have been involved and he wouldn't have known it, in my opinion. So yes, you know, at the scene initially, there was a neighbor that talked to police the same day after the attack, and she said there was a white man.
Thought. Hold it.
Okay.
I want you to respond to. Indeed. Welcome to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Call us at 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. And I'm asking you, please put Rainbow Push under your Christmas tree this year. We need your support. Every Saturday since Thanksgiving, we've been giving away food, as Reverend Jackson has been doing for more than 50 years, going on 60 years, actually, making sure that no one starves during the holiday season. Of course, today we are thinking about our brothers and sisters in Kentucky and Illinois and throughout the country who survived this horrific set of tornadoes that tore through the midsection of our country. Wow, what a metaphor that is. There are fears that are up to 100 people were killed, if not more. We saw an Amazon warehouse collapse in Edwardsville, in Illinois. We've seen whole communities completely leveled, wiped out. Talk about build back better. You got to build back, period. It's unbelievable. And it's hard to believe that the Amazon factory did not have a basement. And this is a part of the country where it's Tornado Alley, but we don't expect tornadoes in December. So there's a lot to think about, but we're sending prayers and love to all of these families who have been displaced and who've had their lives just completely disrupted. But we know God is the healer, and we're praying for you. And we want our government to do right by you. God bless you, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson. Reverend Jackson is in London today. He's going to be joining us shortly as we talk about the Jussie Smollett case. Many of you believe that Jussie Smollett is guilty. But I want to know if you have enough facts to really arrive at that conclusion. It seems that more and more we've jumped to conclusions. We haven't arrived at them. There's a lot of information that many of us just don't have about this case. Indeed, Jussie Smollett didn't even want to go to the police. He didn't want to report it. And I think Shelley Stanley, he had a big scene that he was going to be filming that week, a historic scene in which he would have been getting married on the show, right? This would have been a black gay marriage, historic. So that was not what he was trying to do. So, Shelley, as you hear Reverend Thompson from Make It Plain, the Make It Plain podcast, as you hear Robert Patillo, brilliant lawyer, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to what Reverend Thompson was saying about, why did so many people turn on him? Some analysis that I've heard is that it's really homophobia from different communities to turn so strongly against him, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot. And to Attorney Patillo's point about the defense having witnesses on the stand, there was actually a really powerful witness who was not very much reported in the media. He spoke just before Jussie gave his testimony, and though the media did report it, it then got quickly drowned out by their reporting of Jussie's testimony. But this witness, his name is Anthony Moore. He was a guard at the Sheraton Hotel, and the police actually saw him on film when they were looking in surveillance cameras. They found this film 2 days after the attack, which showed the suspects running from the scene and running by him. And he shined his flashlight on one of the suspects who he told police the next day, so 3 days after the attack, that the man was 6 feet tall, masked, and white. And the second suspect blocked his own face from Anthony Moore. In court, Anthony Moore got on the stand and said that he had felt pressured and threatened by the special prosecutor's office to change his story and to say that the man who ran by him was black and not white. And then Jussie's team asked him, is the person who did that to you here today? And he said, yes, he is. And they asked him to point to him, and he pointed to Sean Weber of Dan Webb's special prosecutor team. And so this was a huge, obviously attempted cover-up and threats of a witness, a huge story that did not really get the coverage that it needs to in the media, that they wanted him to change his story and say that the guy that he saw, that was literally the exact same description that Jussie gave them. Jussie said that the person was 5'10" to 6 feet, white, young, and masked. And, this man said the same thing, not knowing anything about the case, not knowing Jussie. He said it to police after they came and interviewed him after seeing him on film 3 days after the attack. So that's just one witness, that they found immediately after the attack, and video evidence that they found immediately after the attack, even though, as we remember, they told us in the public that they didn't find anything from the scene. They kept saying, oh, we looked in all these cameras, there's nothing there. Did this even happen? They were sowing doubts in people's minds, when in reality, they found witnesses and video evidence immediately after the attack. So, that's just one witness that was there during the court, who could very much corroborate Jussie's story that there was a white man at the scene. And if that's true, I mean, that's all they're saying. That's all they're saying he lied about. They're saying that he said there was a white man who attacked him, and so that he lied to police about that. But obviously, there's multiple witnesses that say the same thing, and the police's own reports say the same thing. That's why when I first read the police's reports, which they gave to the public because they were apparently so sure of themselves, I was just appalled, to see all the misconduct that they documented in their own reports, and to see these witnesses and their testimony, and to see that there were all these videos that the police lied about, blatantly lied about to the public, to be able to, in my analysis, arrest Black men and charge them, threaten to charge them with the assault, and then turn it on Jussie and say that he was lying about the whole thing.
I think Mark and Robert, it's very disturbing. We just came off of two high profile cases, trials, the Rittenhouse trial as well as the McMichael Bryan trials. But what helped to keep us engaged and helped us really tease out the case was that we had the cameras on, Robert, and that made a big difference. Because you got a chance to see the facial expressions of the judges, and that's why we were appalled by in the Rittenhouse case. It was like, this is so blatant. He is so blatantly um, on the side of the prosecution. Wow, how can this be? But then we saw a judge who sought to be fair in the McMichael Bryan trial, and then you saw a defense lawyer who was seeking to incite the public. Is there a takeaway here? I mean, is when they turn off the cameras in the courtroom, is there no video evidence of anything that happens in the courtroom? Which bringing me to the point of you've got a defense lawyer who said that this judge who had been hostile throughout the trial, that he physically lunged at her, Robert.
Correct, and I think this is, and we on the defense bar say this all the time, that for the general public, even if there is no video of a trial, it's very important for the general public to come to the courthouse and monitor and watch trials. They are open to the public, as we saw with your father in Brunswick, Georgia, the Aubrey trial. And often what happens in the dark stays in the dark unless the public is there to make a fuss about it. These things are not found out about. So even for your regular, everyday, run-of-the-mill cases that don't involve celebrities, if you're not busy on a Monday or Tuesday afternoon or Monday or Tuesday morning, and even if you're not on the jury, find out what trials are going on in your community and go to the courthouse to monitor them. You'll be amazed the difference that it makes when you have an empty courthouse versus when you have a packed house. The conduct of judges, particularly ones that have to be elected, and in the Smollett case, I think very much part of the issue is we don't know exactly what happened. We are not aware of exactly what testimony took place. We have the secondhand accounts of reporters. We have courtroom sketches, but it's very different than a live in-person view where the American public can make their own decisions. And for those reasons, I do believe the Smollett team will appeal many of these charges who convicted upon, but we may not really get a true and honest understanding of exactly what happened at trial, if ever. So very much will be left up to doubt.
Should we be concerned about that?
I think we should be concerned about all trials for exactly that reason. You will be amazed at things that happen in courthouses, be amazed at things that go across the board. So this is why I think it's important for the public to start not simply relying on the news media to report on what's important, but for them to decide on what's important. And I've had trials where public pressure has swayed the judge or swayed the jury in one way or the other. That when there's an empty courthouse, the jury is just completely keyed in. It's human nature keyed in on what's going on in the courthouse. When you have a large dais, there's nothing. There's no way for a jury to ignore an entire audience gasping, for example, when certain evidence is presented. So I think it's part of our civic duty to go and monitor these trials to ensure that justice is being presented.
Are you concerned just Mark, where do you think we should go from here? Because so many of us, where is the black family in particular, and brown families, who are not touched by the system, who don't have to function with the system through at some point? You could be pulled over in your car. You can be stopped in the train station, and it does not. I mean, this is not a respect of class. This is a caste issue that we've got here, Mark. As you hear about some of the details of this case, I mean, and this is a high profile case, as you make the point, Robert. This happens all the time. What does this summon up for you, Mark?
Well, I think it summons up, and again, thanks for having me on, and thankful for this conversation. It's awakening. I think that it summons up the need for us to make the very point Robert's making. There are plenty of families and individuals of color, black and brown, who find themselves in a situation and had no defense, and it's not reported on, so it's not even brought to the light of day. the fact that this could happen to such a prominent celebrity and it not be brought to the light of day is very troubling. Just as we've been talking, as I do multitask, unfortunately, but I'm looking at my phone and I went on Twitter and just put in a search under Jesse Smollett.
Mm-hmm.
There have been almost 1,100 tweets about Jesse in the last hour since we started this broadcast. Now, most of these tweets are coming from conservatives who are using this story as a way to attack those of us who are non-conservatives, which further causes me to question what is the real agenda here, what is going on. In fact, many of these conservatives, and most of them Trump supporters, their reactions and concern about Justice Smollett seem to me to be disproportionate to what is really going on. And so I think we have to look at all of that even in a certain context to see what this is really all about. But again, I hope that this wakes everyone up, and just to borrow what Robert was saying, it lets us know that this is one case we're being made aware of because of the fact that Jesse's a celebrity, but most people are non-celebrities, and they are faced with this day in, day out, are charged, are lied upon, have evidence manipulated against them, and have no defense and no coverage of that even happening to them. And that makes it even more troubling.
Let me go to Chris from Oak Park. Chris, what's on your mind?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And, safe travels to Reverend Jackson to London and back. What I wanted to say is it goes to show you that Chicago police, when they want to solve a crime, they can. They'll put the resources. And you see that when Eddie Johnson, a disgraced former superintendent, he went all around the world on shows about Jesse Smollett, but was very silent about the missing over 50, 60 black women that were missing. Also, he was later found out to be a liar because he lied and said he passed out in the vehicle from his kidney transplant medication, but we found out he was drinking and with his mistress. We know Rahm lied about Laquan's so he can get reelected. Also, I wonder, are they going to prosecute Alderman Joe Morano for making a false report about his vehicle was stolen when it was in possession by his mistress? Also, I wouldn't believe Chicago police if the Pope ran it. They have a history of lying. They're under a consent decree right now. I think Mr. Smollett will have a valid appeal here. He doesn't have any priors, any felonies, so I think he will, and he has the means to do it. I just think everything needs to be fair, which I don't believe it was. Dan Webb comes in the midnight hour to be holier than thou. I do respect him as an attorney, but in the Mayor Daley case of his nephew, Vaneco, who pushed and killed the man on Division Street and ran away, they blotched the case for 10 years, closed it, lost files. There was corrupt detectives on that. They lost files. They communicated with the family, communicated with Daley. He got 60 days in jail. He chose the jail he wanted to be at and a $20,000 fine. So if Chicago wants, the Chicago machine was at work, I think. And as the lady stated about the officers with their passes, we know. Look at Jason Van Dyke. Mm-hmm. Look at his past. Chicago didn't rein him in and end up murdering Laquan McDonald. Look at John Burge. They didn't rein him in, and we're still paying settlements. People are still locked up for that. I think we need to definitely look at that. And also, anytime you can get a bond for murder like Jason Van Dyke, it's kind of selective, but I would say it's the Chicago machine at work.
Well, you know what? I think it's something that we need to be concerned about, and we're going to get more details of this case throughout this show. Just I think we have to look at justice, everybody. Justice, justice, justice. It's not personal. It really isn't. One day it's Jesse Smollett, the next day it's you. Trust and believe. That's the way it works. But no cameras in the courtroom. Uh, these Osendaro brothers who were uh, drugs and guns were found at their home and they were not charged. They were being held for 48 hours. In the 47th hour, they changed their stories. Has anyone asked about that? I think that we need to know. I think we need to know. I think you need to know. Back with more of Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson in just a few minutes, but I hope you will join me on my show throughout the week, morning drive, 6 to 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, of course, on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We took over the airways for Air America and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to please put push under your Christmas tree. We're giving away food. We're trying to take care of people every day throughout this holiday season, and we stay open 6 days a week. Pushing for you is what we do. Back with more of Keep Up Alive in just a few minutes.
Chelsea Manning, that if corporations taking our information like Facebook or Twitter or anybody else, that's fine. But if anybody wants to reveal exactly what the United States government is doing and what many of these large multinational corporations are doing, they are sending a message that we will never relent. It doesn't matter how many presidents are put into office, how many prime ministers, we will hunt you down to the ends of the earth. And I think it's a chilling effect on the free release of information.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why, like you said, that's the thread I see in these two cases. And I think we all should be very, very concerned, very, very disturbed. And what I want to do is draw the line, make the relationship between these two cases, because to me they are connected. They are connected. If you try to stand up for those who live or who are born on the downside of advantage, uh, the establishment seeks to destroy you, and oftentimes with our cooperation, Shelley. That's what's so disturbing.
Right. And I think, something that a lot of people don't know about Jesse, which I certainly didn't know because I didn't know who he was. But when I started researching him, his mom was a campaigner for Angela Davis's freedom when she was facing the death penalty, and she was a Black Panther herself. And so the children grew up in an atmosphere of activism and political, social responsibility. And Jesse was very outspoken about Donald Trump's policies, that he was very much against them. He did not like them. He was campaigning against Trump's candidates during the midterm elections very openly. And I think he did a music video that had Trump in it, part of it. And so, and then we saw that, the Trumps got very, very involved in this case and continue to be now. Just very quickly, there was an article that came out on February 1st. So the attack happened on January 29th. By February 1st, there was an article that came out in the Mercury News that was titled, is Donald Trump Jr. promoting a Jussie Smollett conspiracy theory? And so, we can see that, he was so much involved in saying that this was a hoax immediately after the attack with no proof whatsoever, except his own supposed intuition, that they wrote an article titled that within 3 days of the attack. So there's a lot, that was going on, behind the scenes, or not really available to the public so much. But the reason for that, too, is that the media, I felt in this case, did a very terrible job and didn't ever ask the Chicago Police
15
Department
seconds.
Stand
any
by.
questions.
No, we'll get to that on the other side. But they did a masterful job because that's what they intended to do. They intended to help send him to jail.
5.
Hey, everybody, 866-594-HOPE, 866-594-4673. Chaparral, thank you for the correction. I put my radio show calling number on there, but I want to hear your voices. We want to hear your thoughts about this Smollett case, and we're going to be talking about Julian Assange tomorrow on my show because I think that's a case that we need to watch, praying for him. He had a stroke in prison. He's under a tremendous amount of pressure. And we pray for for the Smollett family, because they're under a tremendous amount of pressure. But now is the time to tell the story. You got to tell the story. They plan to appeal. What do you think about this, everybody? The majority of you say, you know what, I agree with the verdict. But do you have all the information? That's my thing. Do you have enough information? Are you concerned that so much information was left off the table for you? Think about that, everybody. Think about what you've just heard in this past hour. In this past hour, Mark Thompson, I got about 30 seconds for you. In this past hour, just in the opening pieces that you got have given you cause to pause.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that Shelley, you're a godsend. Thank you for helping to uncover all of this. There were those who would turn completely against Jesse, and then those who were too lazy to investigate. But this trucks with the nature of the Chicago Police Department and those who support them. So I'm thankful for you.
Absolutely. Robert Patillo, before we go to break, about 30 seconds for you.
I think it's crucial that we understand that there is this culture of corruption with police officers, but also that there is a burden that has to be met at trial by defense counsel when it comes to presenting evidence. And both can be true concurrently. I do think that this lack of trust that we have between not just the Chicago Police Department, but police departments around the country and communities of color are what prevents actual criminal justice reform from taking place. And that's where we have to start rooting it out nationally.
Shelley, before we go to break, 30 seconds for you.
Okay. Just to throw out another statistic, I would just like to share that the detectives assigned to Jesse's case have more than 560 misconduct allegations formally filed against them by the people of Chicago. And they were sued for misconduct 16 times that they had to pay out in. So the city taxpayers paid almost $7 million to the victims for just the detectives assigned to his case.
Well, how about that? That is just crazy. But it was inadmissible at court. But it's something that you need to know. You need to know about these Osundaro brothers. I think it's Osundairo. That's right. Osundairo. Osundairo brothers. And the trouble in their own backgrounds that might have inclined them to change their story at the last minute, everybody, 1 hour before they would have been charged. There's so much to talk about on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Want to hear your voices? 866-594-HOPE, 866-594-4673. Back in just a few minutes. Thank you for listening to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. For more information on upcoming shows and guests, please visit our website at www.keephopealiveradio.com. Hey, everybody, welcome to Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson, the great Aretha Franklin, and the great James Cleveland, and this great, great Southern California Community Choir. Really, the iconic album in gospel music. Wow. Mary, don't you weep. Well, we don't want anyone to be weeping this morning, but a lot of people are. We've got people in Tennessee and Arkansas and Missouri and Kentucky, Illinois. Oh boy, more than 70 people dead. Fears that more than 100 people could have been killed in this spate of tornadoes. Really, this is turning out to be the strongest set of tornadoes, the strongest tornadic activity in the history of the United States. Entire towns where thousands of people lived have been leveled. We're praying for them this morning and praying that they will get all of the help that they need. As we had this fight about infrastructure, this is when you see it. This is when you see that people need basements. So when you have a the warning that a tornado is coming, you're supposed to be able to go someplace and hide. Many people in this part of the country don't have basements, stunningly, in Tornado Alley. So there you have it. So we're just going to continue to pray, and pray and work until something happens so that they can get their relief. Sending prayers to all of those families. Hey, everybody, let's talk about the Jussie Smollett case. Call us at 1 594 HOPE, 1 594 4673. We're streaming on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show page and on Facebook on the Reverend Jesse Jackson Senior page, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. We want to know your thoughts today. I want to know your thoughts today about this case. The overwhelming majority, if you believe that the verdict in this case was correct. But as you get more information, do you still believe that to be true? What if you found that a lot of what you heard about the case and the trial just were not true? What if you found out more about who conducted the investigations? What if you asked questions about these Osundairo brothers and their troubling backgrounds? What if? What about the judge in the case, Cook County Judge James Lynn, who is accused of having physically tried to attack one of the defense lawyers, a black woman by the name of attorney Tamara Walker. There's a lot that we've got to unpack. Looking at the records of these detectives, okay, inadmissible in court, but in the court of public opinion, you need to talk about it. You need to know about it. So we've got this brilliant investigative journalist who almost single-handedly has brought all of this information to light. Shelley Stanley. I bumped into her in Counterpunch, and she's been in Face to Face Africa, and she needs to be all over the place. You need to hear at least this side of the story. We've got one of the top podcasters in the United States of America. Indeed, this is one of the top 20 civil rights podcasts. Make It Plain. That's right. I have Minister. That's right. Reverend Mark Thompson, brilliant preaching man. And of course, brilliant civil rights lawyer, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, who is also the host of his own show on WAOK this afternoon from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. You don't want to miss that. He's going to be talking about Julian Assange, as will I on my show tomorrow. So let's talk about Jussie Smollett. And please, in the meantime, please put push under your Christmas tree. Reverend Jackson's ministry is almost 60 years of age. He's been doing this now since 1965. That's almost 60 years, everybody. And so we need your support every Saturday. If you need something to eat, if you need to get some groceries, come on over to 930 East 50th Street. We have been distributing food since Thanksgiving. We always do that. And my father does that because he had to stand in a food line when his scholarship money ran out and he needed to feed my mother, myself, and my brother Jesse. And my mother was pregnant with my brother Jonathan at the time. You never forget that. So, everybody, God bless you. Stay right here. Call us at 1 594 HOPE, 1 594 4673. Let's talk about the Jussie Smollett case and let's get some more of these facts out so that you can make an informed decision and arrive at a conclusion and not jump to it. Back in just a minute. And when he got that, Jesus said, for the benefit of you who don't believe. But you wanted to ask her a question. If you can ask it again once again on the air.
But just real quick, Shelley, when you were on break before, you were speaking about someone who wrote an article about 3 days after the incident. I missed the name. Who were you speaking of? I missed the name. I'm sorry.
It's the San Jose Mercury News, and I just looked it up. It's the author is Martha Ross, the journalist, and the article is titled "Is Donald Trump Jr. Promoting a Jussie Smollett Conspiracy Theory?"
Wow. Okay.
And the subtitle is President's Son seems to believe the Empire Star's attack is a hoax.
It's so interesting that they all pounced on that so quickly. That's real quickly.
Right, exactly. Because he reported that the person who attacked him yelled, "This is MAGA country," and I was talking to people about that because a lot of people were saying, Chicago is not MAGA country and that's just ridiculous and things like that. But when I heard that, I didn't think Chicago. I thought the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying this is MAGA country. United States is MAGA country, So that was something that, I thought people might have been confused about, that they were talking about Chicago rather than the country itself. But yeah, they definitely did jump right on it. And still now, I'm seeing that Donald Trump is saying that, he should be going to jail for decades. And, Donald Trump Jr. is putting out several memes about Jussie.
Well, like I said, if you look even on Twitter now, I mean, you would think he was Nancy Pelosi. I mean, they're coming at him like he is made some political thinking. I'm like, what is going on here? It's really crazy. Candace Owens, we know how she's going off. But I mean, they're just all this stuff on Twitter. Like, wait a minute, what is I'm baffled as to Jesse. They're social reform of his import for them. It's really crazy.
Well, they are coming after him, but there are some studies that show that we're dealing with backlash in the aftermath of the protest last year behind George Floyd's killing. And so there is always that. I mean, remember, Reverend Jackson ran for the presidency during the Reagan era. No one would stand up to President Reagan. One of his opening campaign events was in Philadelphia, Mississippi. No bus station, no airport, but you did kill Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney there. We forget how frightening Reagan was to us. I couldn't vote then, but just the thought of him becoming president was frightening because he was such a right winger. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember the thing.
Now, I don't think Robert and Shelley can't remember that because they were not old enough. You and I are. I mean, seriously. No. I mean, look, honey, as my father told me, if you don't like birthdays, try missing one. Okay? So I love my birthdays, all of them. That having been said, this, and we are, that happened, what happened with Jussie happened in the context of Laquan McDonald. Everybody was up in arms about the CPD and Rahm Emanuel. The atmosphere was so poisoned. Rahm Emanuel had to bow out of the race. He had planned to run. He had planned to run for re-election. He couldn't do it. He was so unpopular.
So clearly, Cheryl, I guess you're right. So that was part of the motivation too. They needed something to offset the Laquan McDonald piece to try to help their image, right?
Hey, here you're holding national press conferences. I mean, come on, what is that? We'll be right. Come on.
Ongoing.
Yes, Lord, help me to hold out. 1-866-594-HOPE, 1-866-594-4673. Oh boy, oh boy. Maybe unsurprisingly, Jussie Smollett was convicted on 5 out of 6 counts. And will he serve jail time? It seems that he will. and he might get some additional charges. Shelley Stanley, investigative journalist, Reverend Mark Thompson, and Attorney Mark. Attorney Robert Patillo. Attorney Patillo, before I get back to Shelley Stanley, do you think that he'll serve time, and do you think that he will be penalized? Will he be labeled a perjurer?
I think a couple of things have to happen there. One, on the question of perjury, I do doubt some people have been talking about in media whether or not there will be additional charges for perjury at his trial. I doubt that seriously because if you were able to charge a defendant with perjury for testifying in their own defense, then literally every defendant who lost will be charged for perjury after they lose the case. So I doubt those will come down. Now, as far as jail time goes, as well, large part's going to depend on what happens at appeal. Whether or not there's any error found at trial, which will allow the defense to have a new trial or to have the case overturned at appeal. And then also, we still have to go through the sentencing phase of the trial. So for Mr. Smollett, if he maintains his innocence, a large part of sentencing often comes down to a show of fakave, ability to admit that you've done wrong, ask leniency from the court, and kind of lay out a plan. Your attorneys put together a plan on what you can do in order to avoid jail time. So in a normal case and situation, Mr. Smollett would issue a public apology, said he, of course, disagrees with the opinion of the jury, but understands the errors that he has made, pay back restitution to the city, do community service hours, and then kind of lay yourself before the court in order to try to avoid jail time. Without that, and if he is still dedicated to maintaining his innocence all the way through and through, that he could indeed receive jail time in the case, more than likely not significant amount that will be served concurrently between the charges. I will predict between 6 and 12 months without probably serving 50% of that period of time. So he may end up with 3 months or less in actual custody, but that's only really if he decides not to maintain his innocence and not kind of throw himself upon the court. Because you very well could, in a normal case, avoid jail time altogether on these issues.
Well, I mean, look. I think that if you believe you are, if you maintain your innocence, I just think that there are worse things than prison, and that is just losing your principles here. I mean, there's something about this that stinks to high heaven for me, and so. I mean, where do you see this going? What are people saying when you're talking to them? Because you have one of those popular podcasts, uh, Reverend Mark Thompson, in the country. I mean, as you get out and talk to people, are they saying anything about the case?
No, unfortunately, and that's what's troubling to me. Everyone just went along with the narrative that ultimately became but of jokes. Jesse became a target for comedians, black comedians, everybody else. And as I said, I mean, we unfortunately live in somewhat of social media culture that is kind of bent on ridicule. And in many situations, I'm not saying that's unfounded, and people like to say and do funny things. And Jesse became the person on the short end of the stick with that, and then people were just too ready, too quickly to do that. I think that says a lot about us as a society and a culture, that something like that would happen. What would make Jesse more susceptible to committing the type of crime that he's been wrongfully accused of? I mean, that's what was always baffling to me. And it was overwhelming. So I had to speak for myself personally. When all that started happening, I probably was guilty of not doing what Shelley did. But I'm not Shelley. That's why Shelley's who Shelley is. I just kind of resigned. Now, I never made any statements to the effect that I believe in the charges against Jesse, but it was so overwhelming, you really didn't have anything to come back with. I think what Shelley has given us is some information and ammunition to not only push back against this, but to be more discerning with our third eye when it comes to cases like this going forward. And again, the way the media reported it, it wasn't even speculation. I mean, it was almost as if it was definitive, in fact, that Jesse had made every bit of this up, and that the brothers were telling the truth. And again, what did I say about it? Nobody's ever heard of these brothers. Nobody knew who they were, but the public was more ready to believe this coerced story from them than they were someone who they watched on television every week. And that, I think, so I think there's some blame to go around, not only in terms of what conspiracies the conservatives are pushing, but how we as a society, and I know this, upsets a lot of people because some of us, worship at the grill of social media these days, but many of us are just far too influenced and susceptible to it, so that if it's there, it has to be the truth.
Because wait a minute,
And
because
that's
Mark,
important.
hold on. This is not just
But,
conservatives who are pushing this.
oh no,
Hold on.
but no, but here's what I said. I said two things, two categories. There were conservatives. Then there were those of us on social media, including Black people,
Yeah.
not just conservatives. I want to be clear about that. I'm
Yeah.
not saying we're just conservatives. I'm saying that.
Oh no,
to me,
I'm underscoring your point, and I'm
Oh
going
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
going from conservatives, and because Black people are also conservative, because that's why we wanted Rosa Parks and not Claudette Colvin, okay? Because the presentation means a lot to us. A whole lot of things went into that, colorism and all of that. Even though they're both fine women. That having been said, it's just mystifying to me that we would flip and believe a corporate media who tell lies on us all the time. They make us seem like we're less responsible than we are, that we're less academically inclined, less hardworking, less. And when they come after one of us, what we do very quickly is flip and say, you know what, they're right. Well, it was on CNN, so it must be true. Are you serious?
Right.
I mean,
right,
how does that work? How does that work for you? I mean, I
Well,
don't
well,
know.
again, just in close, let me just say this. I think that to me, that's the bigger point here. We know what our enemies do. We know them well. About us, so there's something about us that makes us more susceptible to believing stuff because it's on media, just because it's there. And then there's also this culture of gossip and spilling the tea on social media. And we jump all over it. If someone were to go on Twitter today and make up something about the four of us, it might go viral, and it may not even be what's real or what's true. And that, to me, is what is most troubling about all of this. And a lot of our own people were caught up in that. And if we weren't caught up in it, like I said, you were like me, and we're just like, well, I mean, it is what it is, and nothing you can really do about it. But something has to be done, because but for the grace of God goes
Every single
any
one of us.
This could happen. It could happen to either one of us, any one of us.
At any single time. Charlie, before we go to some of these callers, give me some other pieces that we might not know. I mean, I could have you on the radio for 12 hours. Just really going through pieces that we don't know that stun us when we find out these bits of information.
Yeah. Can I give more backgrounds about these officers?
Sure.
Okay. So, I looked into the officers themselves in a couple of databases that are available to the public now, the Chicago Reporter misconduct allegations, and then the Invisible Institute database.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are just some of the officers involved. There's Richard Chorak, who taxpayers paid for a misconduct settlement where he allegedly kicked a man lying in a fetal position with fellow officers for several minutes, causing the man severe spinal injuries. Then there's Sergeant Halim, who is accused and who was sued for trying to force an innocent man to admit to a crime he didn't commit, and then choked him and slammed his head into the wall when he refused, and the man was hospitalized. Sergeant Halim and none of these officers received any discipline for what I'm about to describe that they have been sued for doing. There's Detective Monty Cassidy, who has been accused of using racist hate speech, as well as attacking an innocent man and falsely accusing him with drugs and assaulting an officer. In a second lawsuit, he's accused of attacking a woman falsely arresting her and subjecting her and her son to many, many abuses. There's Detective Kevin Stoll, who himself allegedly shot an innocent man in the stomach, lied about it, and then charged the man with drugs and assaulting the officer. And the man had to wear a colostomy bag and have several surgeries. There's Ronald Jasica, who has more complaints than 93% of Chicago officers. He has 34 allegations against him. And in his first 6 years as an officer, he was accused of 22 crimes against the public and then was made a detective. There is Detective Sassine, who was sued for being involved in a case where the victim of a violent attack was arrested and charged. So this man was being attacked by his neighbor who had a knife, and the man's fiance called the police. The police show up. The guy is still being attacked in front of them. His hand is bleeding. The neighbor still has the knife, and they arrest him and put him in jail, where he spends 2 years until the charges were dismissed by a jury. There's also Javier Zambrano, who has 17 civilian allegations against him, including damaging and trespassing on the property of 2 white women with 16 officers, and unnecessarily displaying a weapon off duty with 21 officers against 8 Latino men. As I said before, these officers have been formally accused of 560 misconduct allegations. There's another one, Sharon Huffman, who off duty was drunk, formally accused of being drunk and being racist towards a group of Black women while she was drunk. And that another officer had to show up, and then she didn't give them her identification, and that was a sustained charge for her. But yes, they've been accused of, basically, I think things that are very relevant to this case, as Attorney Robert Patillo was saying, like evidence tampering, racism, homophobia, arresting innocent people and then framing them up, and many other crimes. They've also been accused of criminal sexual assault by the public. So these things, I think, are very important. And another thing I just wanted to bring up was that, Jussie does have the right to a public trial, and that was also violated several times during the trial. That's his Sixth Amendment right. But there were many times where Judge Lynn actually banned all of the public from the courtroom, even some of Jussie's support, like family members and friends. He banned them from the courtroom. I came about halfway into the trial, and I myself was taken out by the whoever, sheriff or whatever, into the hallway where we all stood. There was about 20 people in the hallway during Anthony Moore's testimony. Nobody from the public was allowed to be in the courtroom during the testimony of the security guard, who said that, the suspect was white and that he was pressured by and threatened by the special prosecutor, John Weber, to change his story. And there was, luckily for all of us, a lawyer there who had been kind of a legal observer throughout the case. April Pryor, a Chicago attorney, who was out in the hallway with us, who had not been allowed to be in the courtroom. And she started calling the chief judge, and she called also Judge Lynn's direct supervisor, Erica Reddick. And Judge Reddick, intervened in Judge Lynn's behavior to let us into the courtroom again, and we got an overflow room. But I don't think without her being there and knowing to do that, we would have been allowed back in. And there was also a woman, Bella Boz, a Chicago poet and activist, who was taken out, a couple of days before that, because she went and spoke to the press during a lunch break and said something to the effect of, I don't know Jussie Smollett to be someone to falsify a story, but I do know CPD to be that kind of department. And then this is very strange, but Dan Webb went to Judge Lynn and said there are press problems, quote, this is in the Chicago Tribune. And then Judge Lynn from the bench said that Bella Boz was a self-proclaimed activist and that he was not going to allow anyone to infect this trial. And this is a young Black woman. He said he's not going to allow anyone to infect this trial, and had her physically removed from the courthouse. And then the Cook County Sheriff's Office confirmed, to the Chicago Tribune that he had made a verbal order barring her from the court building for the remainder of the trial. And, after this came out in the Chicago Tribune, Judge Lynn said, there was a misunderstanding and she's allowed back. But this was, obviously huge abuses of his authority in the courtroom, illegal behavior, violating Jesse's Sixth Amendment right to have a public trial. And luckily, as I said, there was April Pryor there, and who was able to intervene on all of our behalf and her own behalf. And also the Chicago Tribune, wrote the story about what was happening to Bella Boz, which caused Judge Lynn to have to change his behavior. But there was just so much abuse of authority in the courtroom. And as someone was saying before, this was kind of Cook County politics, to a very high degree, a lot of corruption behind the scenes that was very, very troubling, including even, and this hasn't come out in the media yet, I'm sure it will, but there was actually jury tampering by Judge Lynn hours before the verdict came in. He sent the full Good Morning America video to the jury without the jury asking him to do that, and without the prosecution or defense team asking him to do that. And that is a 17-minute Hollywood edited, video from and so, that, and it wasn't even allowed in evidence in trial. They only showed a minute and a half during the trial. So he sent that to the jury. He refused to allow the defense team to cross-examine it.
Sure.
And then suddenly there's a verdict. And
But you know what, Shelley? Let me tell you
it's
something.
alarming to me that the judge, hopefully, I heard that the judge has to decide if there can be a mistrial, but if he's the one doing the misconduct, I don't know how he would be the only one who can decide if his own misconduct
Shelley, let me tell you
constitutes a
something.
mistrial.
Nothing's going to change if the public's view of Jesse doesn't change. That's why this is not a sweet fight anymore. It's a street fight. As long as the public mistrusts his story, as long as they are not on his side, he's at a disadvantage. That's what they can put this stuff out here all they and they don't want to. They've already shaped the narrative. They let you know how they want you to feel about it. But when you lose your credibility on the street, when you lose that heat, you're in trouble. And that's why getting this story out is so important, because as you could hear from Reverend Mark Thompson, as he heard bits and pieces of the story, as Robert hears more and more of the story, you go, wow, wait a minute, I didn't know all this happened here. That's what has to happen. We've got attorney Fania Davis, noted civil rights attorney, and guess what? She's Dr. Angela Davis's sister. I'm always so excited to say that because she's so brilliant, and they're such a brilliant family. Many people forget that it's Dr. Angela Davis who studied in Germany in the 60s. Yeah, this is what a family they are. What a family they are. We cannot wait to hear their thoughts. And indeed, the Davis family and the Smollett family are very, very close. His activism is real deep, everybody. Real, real, real deep. So, I want to hear your thoughts, Chaparral and Renee. We're going to get to you in a hot second. I want you to call us at 1 594 HOPE, 1 594 4673. Back with more of Keep Hope Alive in just a few minutes.
Help me to hold out. brother. What's up? This is a new recording, man.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm Santita Jackson. I think Reverend is calling in. He might be. He is in London today. I want you to put push under your Christmas tree. Please, please, please. We've been doing so much. We stayed open through the pandemic, giving out Pampers, food, you name it, whatever people's needs were. And the needs have been great, and they still are. And of course, throughout the Christmas season, from Thanksgiving until the end of the year, we give out food baskets. I give out food baskets. There was a time when my parents needed to stand in line for a food basket. When my father's scholarship money ran out when he was at the University of Chicago, and he and my mother have never forgotten that. And they certainly want people to know that they have a place that they can turn to when they're in need. But we need your support. We need you to help push before you need help from push. So please go to rainbowpush.org and join the movement. We've been joined by Attorney Fania Davis, a brilliant civil rights attorney. She's from one of the most distinguished families in the history of our country. She is the sister of the iconic Angela Davis, Dr. Angela Davis, but her whole family's iconic. I mean, brilliant educators, and they've just done so much to lift up our people down through the decades, and we thank God for the Davis family. Before we come to Attorney Fania Davis, let me get one or two calls out the way. Chaparral, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita. Thank you so much for taking our call this morning. I want to say that, my family has been a victim of CPD lies. So when I heard, Eddie Johnson come out and paint this narrative that has been very difficult for Jussie to overcome, because anytime that you have the chief of police get on national TV to explain the case in great detail, they have already shaped that narrative about Jussie. And so this is what I know for sure, that in my own case, my son was shot. He went to police for help. Next thing I know, he's been handcuffed and dying. And right in front of the Chicago Police Department, and they labeled him as violent, combative, and a threat to others. So they put these narratives out on Black men because they know it's easy for white people to absorb this thing and this connotation, this negative connotation about Black men. And what has happened, what has surprised me, is that Black people have also absorbed the fact that they have decided, because CPD, who has a serious history from John Burge, from the killing of Fred Hampton, corruption from the Dailies, the Daddy and the Son, and Rahm Emanuel, Homeland Square, and now all of a sudden Black people trust CPD? I am livid because of the fact that, they put so much resources on this Smollett case. My son's murder had 2 detectives. Smollett had at least 21. So when you compare apples to apples, we are wasting public resources on a foolish case that never should have went to trial. And we have mothers like me who have unsolved murders in Chicago who get no attention. So I am livid, Santita, that we have spent so much time on this and have caused so much trouble for Jussie Smollett. And my thing is that now, what are we going to do about it? We know better as Black people. We know better than to trust them. We cannot begin to trust them when the evidence has shown time and time again that they cannot be trusted. Thank you, Santita.
We should know better. Attorney Fania Davis.
Yes, indeed, we should. And I want to thank the sister and most of all, just to give her my warmest condolences. I'm so sorry that this happened to you and your family. It should not have.
And if I may say this before you continue, Chaparral has a podcast that you can see on The Intercept. They've had more than 1.5 million downloads. It's called Somebody, and it's about her having to jump in and investigate her own son's death. And to fully disclose, I'm in the podcast because the night that he was killed, she called me. I was out of town. And I said, I'm going to ask you to do something that is going to be the most difficult thing you will ever do. And she said, "What is that?" Because she kept repeating, "They've killed my baby." I said, "Honey,
Oh.
you're going to have to write everything down." She
Mm.
said, "You know,
Yes.
Santita, I knew I could call you. I knew you'd care,
Mhm.
but I also
Mhm.
know you had experience with this." Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Oh.
So if you want to walk through an investigation, go to the Somebody podcast. They've been winning awards left and right because it's brilliantly done. And so, Attorney Davis.
I will definitely do that. I will definitely go to the Somebody podcast. Yes, I mean, the sister, I didn't get her name, whose son was shot and who
Shapiro.
had to do her own investigation.
Mhm.
Shapiro?
Yes.
Okay. I just really feel for you, and I thank you for being such a powerful voice speaking out against this injustice when so many in our community, as well as at large, are swallowing the Kool-Aid, are being suckered in by this narrative that, as you so clearly stated, was manufactured, was fabricated. And you mentioned that Eddie Johnson led the charge with the media against Justice Smollett. That is so true. And it is not coincidental that within a year, during 2019, he was fired, right, for lying and unethical behavior and cover-up. So, I totally agree. How can we decide we're going to believe the police in this case? Chicago is known as the racist police terror capital of the country, the coerced police confession capital of the country. It has a documented history and a pattern and practice of all manner of abuse against Black men, whether character assassination as here or actual physical assassination, as in the Fred Hampton and Mark Clark 1969 murders, as Shapiro said, or the more recent Laquan McDonald murder, or the torture of more than 100 Black men and cases of countless others. And I think we need to really notice the fact that in all of these cases of crimes against humanity, against Black men, these incredible abuses, they constructed elaborate, though ultimately failed, cover-ups of their heinous crimes. There's probably a whole lot of cover-ups and heinous crimes that we still don't know about because they are so skilled at covering up and fabricating evidence and doctoring evidence and manipulating reality for their self-interest. This is their MO. And in Justice's case, we indeed see a cover-up and a frame-up, an elaborate cover-up of an actual hate crime and an elaborate frame-up of a hate crime hoax. I don't know if you want me to talk a little bit about the trial and
absolutely, but as you do, Reverend Jackson is called in from London. He's in London this morning, and Reverend, I've got this wonderful. The woman you just heard is Attorney Fania Davis, the sister of your very dear friend, your sister beloved, Dr. Angela Davis, and we've got Shelley. Our own Shelley Stanley, who's the investigative journalist who's brought so many of the facts out. We've got Attorney Robert Patillo and, of course, Reverend Mark Thompson. Reverend Jackson, your thoughts as you are, I know you're out and about in London right now. Reverend? Okay, we can't hear him, but you know what? We'll get right back to him. Attorney Davis, what did you see in this trial?
We're in
Reverend?
London now.
Okay.
We're here to get a degree from Cambridge on Tuesday, I think it is. And there's other celebrations around London and Leicester. We're plenty of Black immigrants who are here, Africa and the Caribbean. Because the British colonizers, of course, have an obligation to help those they colonize. The U.S. and France must do it for Haiti and the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church notion of a discovery. Columbus discovered about he found it. So we're trying to set the record straight, really, Santita.
Absolutely, and congratulations on your honorary degree from Cambridge. We've been talking with Attorney Fania Davis and Shelley Stanley and Attorney Robert Patillo and Reverend Mark Thompson about this Jussie Smollett case. There's so much that did not come out that is very disturbing, Reverend Jackson. Before you go, your thoughts.
Well, Justice innocence of proven guilty. He's not proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. His case is kind of convoluted. The fact of the matter is he was not treated with a sense of justice.
Absolutely not. And so we're talking about that today. Yes, Reverend, we can hear you, but we've got background noise with you too.
I mean, just over a period of time, and he is he's a young guy, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. Attorney Davis, what did you observe in this trial?
Yes, and before I go on, I just want to warmly greet Reverend Jesse Jackson, and just give props and sing praises to him and to you and to the Jackson family. It's really an honor to be on this call with Reverend Jackson and with Santita Jackson. Thank you for having me here. And I just want to relate a little story that his mom told me. He said that Jesse was named after Jesse Jackson.
Yes.
But it's Jesse also to bring in the idea of justice.
That's right.
So I want to thank you, your family, and our Operation Push for being, some of the lone voices that are standing up to police abuse here, especially by the Chicago Police Department, and we're standing up for justice and freedom and democracy and constitutional rights, especially the constitutional right to presumption of innocence, as Reverend Jackson said, and to a fair trial. So what we've seen is an example of denial of constitutional rights, a flagrant example of it here. First, Jesse was denied the constitutional right to the presumption of innocence. For nearly 3 years, he has been targeted by a disinformation campaign orchestrated by the Chicago Police Department. He's been tried and convicted in the media. On November in this year, November 2021, Harvard conducted a poll, and they found that 74% of the public believed that Jussie Smollett was guilty, long before trial. So for 3 years, the majority of people in this country, because of a very calculated disinformation campaign by the Chicago Police Department, and as I said earlier, they're good at that. They're very skilled and very seasoned at manipulating reality for their own self-interest. So that's one thing. He was denied the right to a jury of his peers. Only one Black person sat on the jury. And I think your city is about 30% Black, right?
And didn't the judge comprise the jury?
Oh, he had a hand in comprising and impaneling the jury, and did not allow the defense to really conduct a voir dire that would assure that he got a jury of his peers. The judge, too, was openly aligned with the prosecution in this case. The judge barred from evidence the pattern and practice of egregious police abuse against Black men that Shapiro was talking about earlier by the Chicago Police Department. And he barred from evidence the evidence of the history of police misconduct by the 38 officers who were specifically assigned to Jussie's case. Only 2 officers assigned to Shapiro's son's case. 38 officers assigned to this case, which was like a police lying case, disorderly conduct case. The judge also disallowed evidence of the younger Oceandario brothers' assault on a gay person. So one of the brothers assaulted a gay person on the set of Empire, and restricted evidence of the older Oceandario brothers' criminal record of assault involving a stabbing. The media, except for the media for your shows, continue to uncritically highlight the prosecution's narrative while continuing to give short shrift to Jussie's. Another thing that the media really virtually silenced, the corporate media virtually silenced, is this. At trial, Jussie's lawyers offered dramatic independent eyewitness testimony of a Sheraton Hotel security guard who had no axe to grind. He actually saw the attackers, and he corroborated Jussie's account that it was a white man who attacked Jussie. And the same eyewitness also testified that though he had made 3 separate prior statements to police saying this was a white man he shined his flashlight on that night, a prosecutor pressured him for several hours to change his testimony, to say he saw Black men instead of a white man. I mean, do you hear what I'm saying? The prosecutor pressured him to change his testimony for trial, to take back, what he saw, which was a white man, and instead to say he saw a black man. And then this was a very dramatic moment in the courtroom, Santita. The witness pointed out an attorney sitting at the prosecution table as the one who had coerced him. So we asked, why was this powerful testimony silenced by the corporate media? We're very concerned about these shameful injustices that the media have largely ignored. Well, there's so much more that can be said about this case.
Well, but you know what, Attorney
I
Davis? Yes, I've got about 2
what's that?
minutes. No, I've got 2
Oh,
minutes.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
No, 2 minutes before we go to break.
Oh,
Yours.
me. Okay, sorry. So, I think we need to really kind of surface what's been happening sub rosa here, or what's been going on that's been hidden in the shadows. And that is that it is Trump forces within CPD and the Fraternal Order of Police that are behind this persecution, not prosecution. And essentially, they have been retaliating against Jesse's anti-Trump activism. Let me just first say that we know this case was dismissed by the black state's attorney, Tim Fox, and he did community service and paid a fine, and the whole case was dismissed. Right? It was all over. A deal is a deal. But what happened was that a retired judge got another judge to appoint a special prosecutor to reopen this, to reinstate the charges. And who was that prosecutor? Dan Webb, who was prosecutor at trial. Dan Webb is a Trump associate. He has represented Ivanka Trump. He's represented Jared Kushner and other Trump associates. He's clearly aligned with Trump. And the judge himself, we found that his wife has donated significant sums to the Trump campaign consistently since 2016.
Hold on.
And it's significant, too, that just before this attack occurred, Jesse was out stomping the pavement on behalf of anti-Trump candidates. He was there with Stacey Abrams. He was using his incredible social media influence, his 5 million followers to go hard on Trump. And I believe this got the attention of the Trump forces and racist supporters of Trump in the CPD and the Fraternal Order of Police, and so they retaliated.
Well, hold that thought. Hold on, because we got
to put that out there.
Well, we have to put it out there, and we have to start now, because it's no longer a game that is being played in the suites. Now it's in the streets. You have to win the court of public opinion, and people need to know the story. And the more they hear the story, the more they know that justice was not served in this case. Need you to push under your Christmas tree, everybody. Please, please, please go to rainbowpush.org. Join us on Saturday. If you need food, come on over there on Saturday, because we're giving away food baskets. Closing thoughts on Keep Hope Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. Hope you'll join me on my show tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show on the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, Chicago's Progressive Talk, and AM 950 Radio Voices, the voice of progressive Minnesota, back with more of Keep Hope Alive. Closing thoughts in just a minute.
And I think it's at 11. It's 11 a.m. your time, Sonia.
Oh, that's right. It's earlier. Thank you. Okay.
Oh my goodness. I missed Jazz today. You know what? Let me give her this number.
Jazz Smollett?
Yeah, she just sent me a text and she said she wanted to call in. So I can just let her say something real quick.
Okay.
Okay. And then I'll bring her on my show if she likes. But that's okay. So, oh no, I will do that. I wanted to be protective. So let me do this. I'm going to say, but I want to get this, I want to get this to, I'm going to give Robert your numbers. And I'm going to put all of you all in a chain, okay? Okay. So if you don't mind, because the more people who hear you, and may I do the same thing with you, Mark?
Yes, you may.
You know, so you don't have to call me Mark Thompson. He will call me about a guest, but you should, because that's what this is. That's what this is about. Seriously, all jokes aside.
Yeah, this is great. This has been very enlightening. Very enlightening.
Okay, so let me just see. Okay, so I'm going to put everybody because I'm moving real fast this morning, but I'm giving. Oh my gosh, I am. I'm trying to run out of here. I've got another appointment, but okay. So I'm just putting. Okay. Okay, that's wonderful. So I got you here. I got you, babe. And let me see, Shelly. So I can put you in here. So because you should get on as many of these shows as you can. That's something I've learned from my father. You get on and you make the case, and then that's that.
15 seconds.
Okay, I'm coming in.
I did this in Angela's case. I was constantly speaking all over the world.
Oh, look, I used to go to those rallies when I was a little girl. Get out of here.
Time up at 5.
Oh, it was exciting.
4, 3, 2.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Keep Up Alive. Hope that I will hear you on my radio show tomorrow morning from 6 to 8 Central Standard Time, the Santita Jackson Show on Chicago's Progressive Talk and AM 950 Radio. And of course, please, this is Founders Month at Rainbow Push. Please put push under your Christmas tree. Reverend Jackson, we've been getting a lot of facts of this case that have been obscured. What is our takeaway from this, Reverend? Well, you know, Reverend. Well, you know, we have about a 50% crime solving rate in Chicago with the police. And so when you see, and that's a high, that's a high, that's a high, Attorney Davis. So everybody, please stay tuned because I'm going to have Attorney Davis. I'm already claiming it. I'm going to have her on my show this week, but I tell you what, she's going to be on Robert Patillo's show this afternoon along with Shelley Stanley. Robert Patillo's on WAOK from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. They will also be on Make It Plain this week. So you don't want to miss them because we're going to get the story out because, you know, no one is safe until all of us are safe, everybody. So may God bless you. I want you to keep hope alive. Jeremy, you and me. So grateful for you, Jeremy Geiger, my technical producer, my wingman on this show. Reverend Jackson, Daddy, congratulations on your honorary degree, honorary doctorate from Cambridge University. Yes. But, absolutely. Sending my brother much love, everybody much love, and remember, throughout the week and every day, and until we meet again, keep hope alive.
more information on upcoming shows and guests, please visit our website at www.keephoperaliveradio.com.
Okay, my wonderful people, what I'm going to do is